they're going to be late to the party, to their detriment, to their, they're going to end up buying at a much higher price. You get the price you deserve, right? El Zonte, or Bitcoin Beach, is ground zero for Bitcoin adoption and hyper Bitcoinization. So people are being paid in Bitcoin, they're using Bitcoin, they're saving in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is becoming a unit of account. It's becoming really the form of money for that town and nearby towns. San Salvador, the capital, a lot of Bitcoin going on as well around the country. If you look at a heat map, Bitcoin wallets, you see high concentration in El Zonte, you see concentration in San Salvador, and then you start to see it around the country popping up every single day. So awareness of Bitcoin is extremely high. It's on the front page of the newspaper often. It's being talked about by the president often. We talk about it on our media outlets a lot. And so awareness is there. Adoption is definitely in towns like El Zonte almost ubiquitous, and so it's spreading out to other areas of the country from there. So to kind of really follow up on what's happening, we've decided to launch a new VC fund, El Zonte Capital. Well, Bitcoin has demonstrated that it's the only truly decentralized monetary network in the world. So everything else, whether it's fiat money, CBDCs, gold, or altcoins, are all either absolutely or relatively centralized as compared to Bitcoin. And decentralization is the unique quality that makes Bitcoin revolutionary, because it exists outside of any central control. It exists outside of any state control, of any group or corporate control, and therefore it exists as pure money, where the transaction value of Bitcoin is determined entirely by by the market, so to speak. So this is unique. This doesn't exist anywhere else, and it's as such, it's pulling away from the rest of any competitor or any system that suggests that it might compete with Bitcoin. Clearly, there's going to be a lot of losers. Stefan, you've got the fiat money world is in total chaos. The dollar and the euro are really suffering epic, epoch-defining collapses at the moment. I'm sure I'm not telling any secrets here. It's pretty obvious what's going on in the fiat money world. In gold, as you see, there's no real price discovery in gold. It's manipulated. It's centralized to a large degree in vast storehouses of central banks and other players. Gold is not decentralized, really, when you compare it to Bitcoin. And in the altcoin market, it's clearly not decentralized. You've got plenty of attack vectors. Decentralization takes many forms. Either the code base is changed often, or it's driven by a cult of personality. It's just many forms of centralization you see in the altcoin space. None are truly decentralized. EU has come out and said we need to attack Bitcoin and support Ethereum. I mean, Ethereum is kind of the second most well-known in this space. And it's clearly not decentralized. It's clearly not money. It's clearly an exit scam. And it's clearly the pet of the central bankers around the world. And it should be clear at this point, as Michael Saylor said, altcoins, including Ethereum, you'd have to say that they're both unethical and immoral to support these projects. It goes beyond just failed projects. It's actually immoral to support them. And I think people need to realize that when they support these altcoins, including Ethereum, they're really acting in an unethical, immoral way. There's two factors that drive adoption. One is continued collapse of the banking world and the way the inflating all the fiat money is driving a need for Bitcoin. So in countries where you see a lot of inflation, a lot of money printing, like Central America and South America, Bitcoin is already making huge inroads. And then in countries where banks are precarious or central banks are failing, like in Lebanon or a couple of others, the Bitcoin awareness and adoption is moving forward. And then the other factor that drives adoption is really the way that Bitcoin almost is a way to hack its way into human nature by tickling the greed gene. When your neighbor starts getting wealthy with Bitcoin, you want to find out more about Bitcoin. And the price, the number go up technology that's built into the protocol means a lot of people become envious of their neighbors and friends and family be getting rich on Bitcoin, and they start to check out Bitcoin. So the FOMO aspect to it, clearly you see that in corporate America with Michael Saylor jumping in, and now you got other corporations looking at his balance sheet and seeing what's happening over there and saying, hey, this is something we got to get into. We can't let this guy get super rich, and we want to jump in too. You'll see what we saw in the internet days back in 1997, where it went from 150 million users, and people in the New York Times were writing about maybe the internet's a fad and it'll disappear, to suddenly becoming ubiquitous. So I think similarly with Bitcoin, you've got roughly 150, 200 million users. We're entering a phase now where you'll suddenly see 1 to 2 billion users. We've seen it all over Africa, where with the mobile phones adoption, people just leapfrog ahead, away from the copper wires and telephony that the legacy systems were used to. And that brought on a lot of entrepreneurialism. And what was missing was Bitcoin. So, Africa is really a place that is benefiting incredibly by Bitcoin, by having this pristine, almost virtually perfect money that can cross all over the continent. Because just doing business in Africa from one country to another that could be 10 miles away or a mile away, it required an enormous amount of regulatory hoops to go through on the banking system, and all that's being obviated by Bitcoin. And to your point, absolutely, we have a leapfrogging going on. That's why agile, entrepreneurial countries like El Salvador, other countries all over Africa, and now in Central America, are better positioned to capitalize on Bitcoin than, let's say, the United States or Great Britain, that are really completely entrenched in the old model. And they're not agile, I would not say, when it comes to Bitcoin. They see it as a threat. There are fortunately some politicians in the US, like Cynthia Lummis and others, who are now embracing Bitcoin. Ted Cruz is another. They see it as a vote winner, a vote getter. And people are becoming single issue voters, where they'll vote for the Bitcoin candidate. So that's in the US, unlike other countries, you have states' rights, and the states are very, very powerful. There'll be a couple of states that will start to lead the Bitcoin charge. Could be Texas, could be Wyoming, and then that'll trickle up to the federal level as well. So the states in America, there's a tremendous balance of power that goes on there that's unlike anything in Europe. Europe tends to be very authoritarian in the way that it operates, and really around the world you find that. Only in the States do you have this kind of dynamism. On the big countryside, the bigger countries, I guess you'd have to look at Mexico now. Mexico seems like they keep talking about Bitcoin. They've got some politicians that are very pro Bitcoin. But I think one thing is clear, is that it's inevitable, right? We all say Bitcoin is inevitable. I think that the various countries making it legal tender is just going to keep rolling through until we get a global Bitcoin standard. The countries that'll be last to adopt it will be those who are more sensitive to the disruptive properties of Bitcoin. So the US as a whole. Europe seems really frightened of Bitcoin, which makes sense. The UK is really frightened of Bitcoin. That makes sense, because they are very top-heavy, bureaucratic countries that are very, very slow to change, and they're ossified to a great deal. And so they're going to be late to the party, to their detriment, to their, they're going to end up buying at a much higher price. You get the price you deserve, right?